Welcome back to the channel. Chris Morrison, Gulfside Ministries. Today we're going to continue our learning Greek by reading the Greek New Testament series, looking at the Gospel of John still, 10th lesson, John chapter 1, verse 21. So let's go ahead and look at our verse for the day. And in Greek, it should sound a little something like this. Kai erotesan autan, tiun, Elias esu, kai lege ukemi, ha prophetes esu, kai aperkrise u. All right, and with that, let's look at the unique vocabulary. There are 6 words. You can see them here highlighted in red. So let's go ahead and define them for you. Erotesan means roughly they asked. Ti means what. Un means therefore or then, something like that. Elias is the word for Elijah. Lege means he, she, or it said. And of course, prophetes, you should be able to tell, is a prophet. And with that, we should be able to do a wooden translation, given we've already read and our current vocabulary. It could go something like this. And they asked him, then what? Elijah, are you? And he says, not I am. The prophet, are you? And he answered, no. Pretty wooden, but hopefully you can see that pretty clearly, and you should have a good sense already of what is going on. So let's go and get right into some grammar notes. First, let's start with the lege. So more about verbs. You see that epsilon iota ending I have here in blue for you. This is from lego, and lego is the present tense I say. So lege. The a ending sound is a third person plural ending. So whenever you hear that epsilon iota on the end, when you hear that a ending, you should kind of hear and think, oh, that's the third person. So it's not I said, it's not you said, it's he, she, or it said. And I keep saying said. That's technically past tense or aorist. This is present tense. And in fact, in my wooden translation, I gave you, and he says to them. We'll talk in future lessons about really what tense means, but you can kind of hear that he's using a historical present. And he said to them. We're kind of bringing us down into the action. But let's now get our first. This is called a paradigm. When you study Greek at a seminary or look at a traditional book, you tend to get a lot of these. These are things you should memorize, and you've done enough now verbs that these endings ought to look familiar, and you ought to be able to memorize this pretty quickly. And I think when you learn this paradigm here below, this, and then go back and review the first 21 verses we've done, you'll see this idea pop up quite a bit. So these are called your primary active endings. So let's take again so here on the right side, and let's just say them. And I would recommend you just learn to repeat these. Lego, leges, lege, legamen, legete, legusi. Lego, leges, lege, legamen, legete, legusi. Just learn to say that over and over and over again. Lego, leges, lege, legamen, legete, legusi. Lego, leges, lege, legamen, legete, legusi. That is your endings for your first person singular, second person singular, third person singular, and then your plurals, first person, second, and third person plural. So what you have here is you have this present tense stem leg. So that's to say, setting aside infinitives for now. That's that stem meaning about saying. And then you put that O ending that becomes lego, is I say. To the same leg and put ace on the end, that's you say, singular. That's a singular you. You are the one saying, leges. Put that third person lege, that becomes he, she, or it is saying, lege. He says, she says, it says. If I want to talk about we are saying, it would be legamen. See that amen ending? You want to talk about you as a plural. The group are saying to me, that'd be legete, legete, legete. And technically, you want to put keep the emphasis legete. And then the usin, and I have that usi, usin. Sometimes that new ending out there is in parentheses. Sometimes you'll see it, sometimes you won't. But that usi or usin ending, legusin, legusin or legusi. So again, that's hopefully you hear lego, I say, leges, you say, lege, he, she, it says, legamen, we say, legete, you plural say, legusi would be they say. They're the ones that are saying. So that's the way those those, just memorize that paradigm. That's the way that's going to work. All right, let's look at still further into grammar notes. Now we've talked about the personal active endings, and that's especially the present, but now let's look more about the aorist. So this erotesan, erotesan. So this erotesan is from the present tense verb erotao. Erotao, that's I ask. Erotao, I ask. So how are we taking this present tense I ask and turning it into erotesan? He, she, or they are the one asking. Well, the first, we've mentioned this previous videos. We're going to take that epsilon and tack it onto the beginning. So that lets you know you're dealing with, you're putting, that lets you know that you're dealing with either an aorist or an imperfect. Talk about imperfects later on. And so, but notice in this case, because you already have the epsilon, a double epsilon, epsilon, epsilon row. Well, we're just going to lengthen the epsilon, and a long e becomes a. So erotao becomes ero. And we're not going to say tao. We're going to use what's called the aorist tense stem. So notice erota. So epsilon, rho, omega, tau, alpha. And that alpha is actually, that's a connecting vowel. Then we have the eta, rho, omega, tau, eta, erote, erote, erote. That's because they get the emphasis right, erote. So erote is in the past tense. That's the aorist. He, she, I'm sorry, the asking in the past, I asked, you asked, they asked, we asked. So how do we decide what the ending is? Well, we're going to tack on, because it's the aorist in particular, not an imperfect, we're going to tack on this sa. So erote sa. And now what's it going to be? We're going to tack on our new personal ending, erote san. Erote san. That's its third person singular. So again, bottom line, when you look at this, is you have the lengthened, you're augmenting with adding that epsilon, which lengthens the initial epsilon. Then we're going to add the tense formative sa, and then we're going to add on the personal ending new. So erotesan. So erotao becomes erotesan. So that's how it becomes. It goes from I asked to they asked. So again, we're going to continue looking at paradigms and verbs. I just want you to hear that you can memorize as you should. Erotesan means they asked, but now you can hopefully kind of start to figure out why. And here, by the way, are your second endings. I mentioned here on the previous, the new endings. We've seen the personal endings. Now here's the these other active endings. So elusa, just, this is from the base word is luo. Luo means I loose or I set free. Luo. So luo, lues, lue, luam, and luba to luusi. You ought to be able to go back and figure out from the previous slide. So if we were to put the epsilon on the front and notice that tense formative elusa, well, we're not going, if we just want to say I freed or I let go, elusa. See that elu, see there's that elusa, and you're done. If I put the sigma on there, elusas, you, singular, you set free, you loose. Elusen, elusen is third, he, she, or it. Let's go. He, she, or it frees. He, she, or it looses. Elusamen, you saw that men ending. Elusate, elusan. So let me just go. So here's your, again, elusa, elusas, elusen, elusamen, elusata, elusan. So these are, again, just two paradigms just to memorize. And just notice how similar these are. O ace a ameneta usi. See? O ace a ameneta usi. And then over here, you are usin. Nothing here, but that sigma, ace, O ace a. Now this is different. O ace. So, but men, amen, te, usin. When you put in, so there's some overlaps between these two. You just kind of have to learn this and memorize it, but hopefully when you see they're similar, it won't be that hard to get to. And so let's do the interpretational notes first. As far as that's really all the grammar we have, a couple of interpretation notes, then we'll offer a smooth translation and finish up. So I've told you before that word order isn't essential in Greek. And so we have here the question, and they asked him, what then Elijah are you? So, of course, in English, we would say, "Are you Elijah?" which is the a smoother translation. But by pulling Elijah up to the front of the sentence, what's he doing? He is emphasizing the matter of John's identity. Not only are we talked about this in the last video, that was the religious authorities. This is the sort that they're the whole question they have is, who is this guy? So we're seeing this this emphasis, this theme of John's identity continue in the grammar itself. So, Elijah, are you? And he answers, no, I'm not. And then, the prophet, are you? So again, they're pulling forward the prophet, are you? They could have said, are you the prophet? But they're pulling forward what's important, Elijah and the prophet. And both of these references imply messianic connections. Anybody who is reading this is going to immediately think, by the connection of Elijah and the prophet, they're thinking about the Messiah. Are you the Messiah? Or do you think you're Messiah? What are you pointing us to the Messiah? That's the questions that are asking, which is important in the Gospel of John, because that tells you something about the book as a whole. To mention something about that messianic connections, Malachi 4:5 just says, "Behold, I will send Elijah the prophet before the great and terrible day that Yahweh comes, the great and terrible day of Yahweh comes." And so again, this is something that they all knew. When Elijah comes, they need to look for the Messiah. So, are you Elijah? They're asking that question. And then I mentioned the prophet also has messianic implications. Back in Deuteronomy 18:15, Yahweh your God will raise up to you a prophet from among you of your brothers like me, and you shall listen to him. So this is a reference to the Messiah way back in the book of Deuteronomy. And again, this is in their ears. So they're asking, are you Elijah? Are you the prophet? And then just want to point out, I would not build any doctrines on this whatsoever, but I do think this is probably intentional in John. Ukemi just means I'm not. It literally just means no, I am not. No, I am, or not, I am. So it just means I am not. But I do want you to note this is going to be, I think, contrast probably really importantly to Jesus is going to say, I think 7 times in the Gospel of John, ego eimi, I am. So compare the ego eimi. Look for example, flip your Bible over to John 8:24 and 8:58. And since you know a little bit of Greek, pull up Exodus 3:14 in the Septuagint. And you can notice that ego eimi there. Ego eimi means I am, and this is the divine name. So it's probably worth noting that here, way back in John chapter 1, in saying ukemi, he's certainly denying to be the prophet, the Messiah. And yet this is going to contrast very strongly with Jesus saying, ego eimi, I am. So the identity, they're concerned with the identity of John. Ultimately, what we're concerned about is the identity of Jesus. That's in the emphasis of the book as a whole. All right, so with that being said, why don't we offer a very straightforward, smoothed out translation that hopefully it's going to land really easily. You can follow it now. It's going to say, and they asked him, what then? Are you Elijah? And he said, no, I'm not. Are you the prophet then? Implied question. Are you the prophet then? And he answered, no. Straightforward, easy enough. All right, so that's going to conclude our 10th lesson on John 1:21. I know these videos have come in fits and kind of bursts here and there. I'm kind of want to roll with these right now, but I stick around here because I'm going to have another interview with Tom Ekman. So Tom Ekman is a Greek expert. He knows Greek. So he and I are going to have a fun conversation about this, and I think we're going to have a really great announcement for the channel following my interview with him. So stick around. Make sure you're not subscribed. If you've made it this far into the video so you don't miss an interview. You're going to really enjoy that. And then we will see you in the next lesson of learning Greek by reading the Greek New Testament when we do John 1:21. Until then, may God richly bless you.